Yeah, great. Good evening and welcome all of you. Thank you for joining on a Sunday evening for this live session on electric vehicle market, the opportunities, and how can one leverage them. Right? You might be a student, you might be a professional, you would have started the career just now, or you are somewhere in between, and you're considering for a transition to definitely a sunrise industry, which is definitely at this point of time the electric vehicles industry, and then you might want to understand what's happening in the industry, especially in the context of COVID 19, what would happen to the industry going forward. I'm sure these are most of the questions that you might be having. We will try to answer as many as possible. Okay. Now, so there are certain platforms where I would say, yeah, there are certain platforms where I can share the presentation also. So if at all you are able to view the presentation, you may as well do so. So this is how I would like to structure our rest of the uh, talk for the next uh, few minutes. Basically, yeah, most of you know who I am, but however, for the benefit of many, I would like to introduce myself. Yeah, YSR Rajeev Kumar. I carry a chief minister and a prime minister in my name. And by qualification, I'm a bachelor's and master's from IIT Madras 2010 batch. Engineering design is the discipline and specialization in automotive engineering. I worked with brands such as TVS Motor Company, Bosch. I was part of the Bosch Global Leadership Program. I also worked with Mahindra and Mahindra, then for a short stint with an edutech company called Topper, and right now Gati. The As part of the electric vehicle business, I was heading the electric vehicle business at Gati as well as the corporate strategy at Gati. As part of this profile, I was also actively involved in the advisory committees, which are which were drafting the EV policies at central and state level, working closely with OEMs, government entities, NITI Aayog, Rocky Mountain Institute, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, and of course the state EV bodies. Other than this, I also evangelize and lead the Indian electric mobility revolution by representing at various national and international platforms. Just to tell you, whenever I'm called for such conferences, both at national and international level, each participant is charged at least 7,000 to 10,000 rupees as a participation fees, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all the snippets which I generally present in such conferences to you so that you are all benefited and you get all of this at free of cost. Now, you might wonder, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I believe in peer learning. It is always good to learn from one another and to grow. And as I said, as an evangelist of electric mobility revolution in India, I would like many of the youth and the engineers to take this electric mobility path and take things forward. Yes, thank you. Caps కూడా ఉన్నాయి. whoever is able to see the presentation can see that. Now, this is what the agenda is going to be for the day. I will I will talk about the electric vehicle market in the same presentation that I was mentioning, that I was presenting it across multiple platforms. I will also give you quick statistics about it. Then I will impress upon the drivers of this electric vehicle market and why Gati has come into picture and where are we heading right now. And while we do this, I would encourage you to comment your questions, ask your questions on all the three platforms, whether it is Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. I will try my best to answer all of it. Yeah. So I'm not sure how many of you are able to look at the presentation, but then just to look at the stats of Indian auto industry, right? Basically, Indian automotive industry is one of such key verticals which contributes almost to 7% to India's GDP. And by 2026, the expectation is that it would grow by 12% year on year. And in terms of world rankings, we are the fourth largest in manufacturing and supply of passenger vehicles. And by 2020, we expect that our share would get 8% of the total global passenger vehicle market. Now, the auto component market, which is around 40 billion US dollars, which was in 2015, is right now the target was that it should be around 100 US dollars, and then it is at 100 billion US dollars as of now. Along with this strong push by government, whether it is Make in India concept or national skill development corporations or whatever, right, are basically helping India to unleash its internal portion, its inherent potential to emerge as a strong automotive maker as well as market. I mean, certain points which almost all of you are aware that Jaguar is part of an Indian brand right now, right? And Pininfarina is also part of an Indian brand right now. We see Tatas and Mahindras growing across the globe, which is again a matter of pride for all of us. While these are the greatest things that we talk about, there are a few other things which we cannot ignore. That is, 14 of the 15 most polluted cities are in India. And when you look at the Kanpur's pollution is generally measured in 2.5 particulate matter, that is the metrics. Kanpur is at 170 milligrams per cubic meter compared to World Health Organization standards of 10 milligram per cubic meter. That means it is almost 17 times higher. So by just virtue of somebody being born in that northern belt, he has got a lifespan already reduced by, I would say, 3 to 4 years. And the major contributor for such kind of a pollution is definitely transportation sector, and it goes up to 30%. Now, as per United Nations Federal Climate Change Council that happened in 2015 in Paris, we have agreed to reduce the carbon footprint by 33% to the numbers registered in 2005. Let me repeat again. We signed a treaty in 2015. Okay, somebody messaged me that you're not able to hear the audio. Let me just check it, please. One second. Sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah, thank you for the feedback. Please keep me posted. If at all you're not able to follow or hear anything, let me know so that I can make those corrective actions, take those corrective actions, right? Now, yeah, let me just go to it, right? Now, that is the reason if you see Niti Aayog, which was earlier the Planning Commission of India, now translated into National Institute for Transformational India, right after this 2015 Paris, drafted I drafted a program called National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, NEMMP plan, which targets these targets of reduced carbon footprint by 2030. As part of this NEMMP, FAMES 1.0 was launched and FAMES 2.0 was also launched recently. Now, we will definitely go into details of what this FAMES 1.0 and FAMES 2.0 are. Now, we see that the market is good, auto market is good on one hand, and we also see that the same auto market is doing a lot of disruption to the environment on the other hand. So what does that mean? Does it mean that we stop our growing engine? I don't think so. So that is where we need to be innovative. We need to explore the new ways of maintaining the momentum of automotive industry, the kind of grip we have already we are able to get on the global auto market, and probably bring certain changes in the our product portfolio. Now, how will this benefit? Number one, it will benefit India to take a lead in electric mobility segment. Number two, it will reduce our dependency on oil imports, which basically again directly impacts our fiscal deficit. It reduces, of course, the pollution, and most importantly, we missed the industrial revolution, and we cannot afford to miss the electric mobility revolution. Now, when you look at how different countries handle this electric mobilities, if you look at Europe, especially countries like Norway, they're already well ahead of India, either in terms of penetration, either in terms of technology or product portfolio or catalog. But then their volumes with respect to their penetration or their saturation is very less. For example, Europe, the numbers in terms of the total electric vehicles, when I consider in terms of millions, if it is at 0.5 million, the penetration into the new sales is already at 45%. That means even if it goes by 100%, maximum numbers can reach to, say, I would say 1 million electric vehicles. Whereas when you look at China, our neighbor, the penetration is less than 10%, but then the volumes at this point of time are 2.3 million electric vehicles, right? And if at all there is any market that can compete and that can really stand firm and strong and give a very befitting reply to Chinese market in terms of volumes, is none other than India. So we cannot at any cost afford to miss this industrial revolution. Now, of course, government has got its own, they brought its own push, different instruments of push. As I said, FAMES 1.0 was launched, FAMES 2.0 was launched, and few points which I would like to bring to your notice. There is a separate department called Energy Efficiency Services Limited, right, EESL, that has been formed, again focusing on bringing the carbon emissions, and they released order for 10,000 cars for to create the demand. And we also see now, even at least in cities like Hyderabad, Mumbai, and all Bangalore, and in Delhi also, electric buses, we started seeing them more in numbers flying across the city. Then there would be soon mandates on the percentage of cars that Ola and Uber and Zoom aggregators like this have to maintain, right? X percent of these cars to be electric, right? So all these things the government is doing, incentivizing the purchase of vehicles, giving subsidies to fleet owners, encouraging shared mobilities through buses. These are the things that it is doing on demand perspective. And on the supply lever, it is waiving off taxes. Electric vehicles are at less than 5% of tariff of GST. Then they are also talking about separate EV tariff. Instead of it to be either domestic or commercial at least 10 rupees per unit, that they're looking at around 6 rupees or 7 rupees per unit, which is again good. Then they're also talking about single homologation. That means right now for any vehicle to be commercially viable in the Indian market, whatever the vehicle is, that vehicle needs to go through the homologation process at ARAI. But then now they're trying to bring policies where if the vehicle is already homologated in international councils or international agencies, then those vehicles can as well be used. Now, if you look at FAMES 1.0, I'm not sure if you are able to see this screen, but let me talk about FAMES 1.0 and the impact of FAMES 1.0. When you look at electric vehicles as a market, you see there are a lot of buses that are running around. You also see there are a lot of two-wheelers that are running around, to a certain extent three-wheelers. But whether it is four-wheelers in terms of passenger vehicles or four-wheelers in terms of commercial vehicles, the number of vehicles is less. Now, this is not anything accidental, but this is by design. Because when you look and observe FAMES 1.0 closely, 40 more than 40% of cost of electric buses is given as subsidy through FAMES, and close to 30% of cost on two-wheelers is again given as subsidy through FAMES, and around 20% for three-wheelers. Whereas for LCVs, it is at 16%. LCVs means products like Tata Ace or Ashok Leyland, those, etc., Mahindra Jeeto. And for four-wheeler passengers, of course, it is at 17%. So that means what we are trying to say is the B2B is what B2B in terms of shared mobility is what government is focusing on, especially the buses, which is in their control. And when it comes to B2C, it's maintaining its focus around two-wheelers. But then the industry which is not really capturing the eyeballs of the government, or I would say the industry where the government itself is not putting its attention, is LCVs, because this is one of the low-hanging fruits, right? Because if players like Gati, DTDC, Blue Dart, Amazon, Flipkart, Big Basket, etc., if they make a choice that henceforth all my last mile deliveries that happen in the cities will happen through electric vehicles, then that would bring down these products like ACE, diesel vehicles, diesel autos significantly. But why they are not doing it? Because there isn't enough incentivization. When you compare with buses, it is at around 44%, and when you compare with three-wheelers, it is, and when you compare with two-wheelers, it is at 13%. But for the LCVs, it is only 16%. And this feedback is again and again given to the government, and I hope we will come up with better incentive policies. Now, I would like to kind of put a stop here, because to the presentation, rest of the things I'll of course closely. I will briefly summarize how Gati is contributing to this. So we spoke about electric vehicle market, basically the drivers of electrical market, how government is poised to do. It is either by will or by pressure, we do not know. We have signed the treaty and we are answerable to the International Council. And at the same time, it is good for our own generations to have a healthier and better life. And especially during the lockdown, we understand that once the activities of our of the human elements has reduced, the nature started rejuvenating again, right? There are photos and videos. I'm not sure the validity of them, but then they say that right from 200 300 kilometers the Himalayas could be seen. I think whether it is right or wrong, but that's the right message, right? And from the sustainability point of view, if at all we have tasted the beauty of nature, we have tasted the healing of nature that is happening at this point of time, then I think we should definitely continue and bring the sustainability at this point of time. Now, so how Gati has come into picture? IKEA is the. Can you all hear me now? I still get messages saying that I can't hear you. Can you all hear me now? Yeah. Sorry, I may not be aptly responding to the talk, because as I said, I'm broadcasting on 3 different platforms, so I'm juggling between the windows. So the point that I'm trying to communicate here is it is good. I mean, going forward, it is all about development, but it is sustainable development, and there is no escape from electrification of mobility, because 30% of the contribution to air pollution is made by transport sector. Now, IKEA, you are all aware that is into India, and it started its operations from Hyderabad. And IKEA is part of EV100 campaign. EV100 campaign is basically a group of companies which pledged themselves, saying that 30%, saying that by 2030 they would convert all their mobility services into electric. Now, Gati has been chosen as the last mile delivery partner for IKEA, and it is imperative that Gati would equip itself right in fulfilling the customers' requirement and customers' services, right? So that is how we started serving IKEA through electric vehicles. And when we started bouncing this idea with different customers, say Big Basket, Amazon, Flipkart, etc., and then the response was awesome, and that is where we are building this under a new vertical called Amman Shakti. Now, I would like to pause here. I think 20 minutes is a good time. I've given enough download that is required. Now, I would like to answer your questions. Right? You may drop them in the comments, and if you have any specific questions that I would like to answer. Any specific questions? Now, okay. Now let me directly come to 2 points. How can students, whether they are in engineering right now or pursuing their masters in business, whatsoever, right? How can they prepare themselves? How can they prepare themselves for this EV market, right? Definitely, electric vehicles market is a sunrise industry. Even though the coronavirus may have a little short-term impact on our supplies of most of the our components, whether it is battery cells or in sometimes even the direct products are come from China. But then there would be a short dip for a couple of months. But then again, once the world gets into its normalcy, again this picks it up. So for those students, I would recommend that you choose the right projects, whichever internships that you are talking about, or whichever companies, or whichever universities, or whichever projects that you want to do. Choose the right projects. Get into the if it is an R&D, get into fuel cells technology, get into battery management systems, get into whatever the the vehicle level systems that you want to get into. And of course, not just the R&D is one part, procurement is one more, because a lot of raw materials, a lot of vendor development needs to happen across the globe, across the country. So you can also focus a lot on supply chain management, procurement, and vendor management. And when we all, and for those professionals who are trying to consider a shift, whatever the stream or a vertical you are in, you can of course definitely consider a shift to this industry, whether you are into procurement, whether you are into sales, whether you're into service or in engineering, right? Because it is budding right now. The industry needs more and more talent and resources into this to take this forward. I would encourage you, right? Take whatsoever, even if it is a smaller company, even if it's a startup company, just get going, right? There are many startups within Hyderabad itself which are working in electric vehicle segment. And I'm sure I also am aware of IIT Madras Ether. Ether is one such company which started in the incubation cell of IIT Madras and now is one of the greatest companies to be really proud of. And similarly, I knew that there are certain projects happening in IIIT Hyderabad and IIT Hyderabad, and even at other IITs and IIScs. So choose your guides, choose your projects accordingly, and get yourself planted into it. Yes, please go ahead. Okay, there is one question. What is the business strategy of converting IC engine to EV? Could you please help us in terms of return of investment on direct e-car services? Right. So let me answer this question twice. Now, strategy of converting IC engine to EV. There are possibilities because right now BS6 has already come into picture, and now when the companies have to choose between BS6 and electric vehicles, they would rather go for electric vehicles because BS6 is more like a one jump and then going to EVs. But then with the coronavirus and the slowback in the economy, it is possible that the government might be passing on certain relaxations to these OEMs, and hence the OEMs might still continue to focus on the IC vehicles. And hence the main players may not really focus immediately on bringing the different kind of products in different portfolios. However, there are certain companies who are working on converting the IC vehicles into electric vehicles. They bring the chassis, they remove the engine, they remove the gearbox, they remove everything that is not required, and then they install that with the battery management systems, with the fuel cells, and with the battery and with the charging infra, everything, and then they convert and give it a new life. And but then the policies are being made on how do we standardize all these things. So those vehicles are coming into picture. Now coming into return of investment on delivery e-car services. I think return of investment, when you look at the complete life cycle of the product, there is definitely there are definitely savings to the tune of 20%. But then the initial capex is very high for these electric vehicles. It is because of this reason this becomes an impediment or an inhibition of why the penetration is not happening. But the gap between the IC and electric vehicles is slowly reducing, especially with FAME's policies that are rightly coming into picture. For example, an electric bus which costs around 2 crores, if 40%, that is around 80 lakhs, is given by the government, the cost is directly reduced to 1.2 CR. Similarly, around 30% contribution happens for two-wheelers. If a vehicle costs at around say 1.2 lakhs, around 36,000 is reduced, correct? And it comes to around 80,000. Of course, there is a capping, capping to either 1.2 lakhs or 2 lakhs. Pardon me if I'm a little wrong with the numbers, but then this is the trend. So as long as the fame starts acting into picture, starts building, reducing the gap, and these both become of almost like an apple to apple comparison, then you will start looking at the ROI strongly. A simple calculation: if you look at a vehicle, a liter diesel or a petrol probably gives you around 10 to 12 kilometers, and which would cost around say 70 rupees, right? Example. Then probably per kilometer cost is around say around 7 rupees, 5 to 7 rupees. Whereas when you look at per unit, there are different vehicles give different range. Certain vehicles with full charge for 16 kilowatt hour, that means around 160 units, and they kind of give us around 130 kilometers range. For example, Tigor or Verito. Now, when you start doing the math by yourself, then you can understand that the running cost is as minimum as around 1 to 2 rupees versus 4 to 6 rupees in terms of ICE vehicles, right? So that is where, and then the more kilometers you run, the faster you see the returns on investment for these EVs. But then the best thing is, as the price gap right now, which is really high, if at all it comes together, if at all it comes to around 10.5, I mean 10% to 15% range, then you will be able to appreciate the ROI faster. Refurbished car segment is expected to grow and compete with current sales. Yeah, I think there is one more policy which the government is working on, is refurbishing of cars or handing over the old cars, right? Number one, banning the old cars beyond certain age to be run on the roads, and then establishing factories and garages which would convert these cars into garbage, right? This policy is being brought in. I think once this policy gets in, then most of the car park, which is in the roads right now, gets killed right away. And for example, Delhi governments, if you look at Delhi government's EV policy, that is an awesome policy. If anybody brings an existing ICE auto three-wheeler to the government and then takes an electric vehicle three-wheeler in exchange, he gets additional incentive, right? So these kind of experimentations are happening in pockets. For example, Delhi's EV policy, I would say, is the best among different policies, and of course the Telangana policy, Hyderabad policy also is a very comprehensive policy, right? So these are all right now happening in pilots, but when these are centrally brought and controlled and monitored, and then these policies are framed, and I'm sure that will give way to a lot of the EV market. What are the steps to look forward to set up portable batteries business? This is a very good question. So portable batteries makes very much sense for vehicles of two-wheelers category, because generally batteries are heavy. But for two-wheelers, whether it is 1.5 kilowatt hours or 2 kilowatt hours, they are portable. And Honda, right now, Honda is working with certain startups. I cannot reveal those names. Based again near Medchil and within Hyderabad. They are trying to develop portable battery solutions to both two-wheelers as well as three-wheelers. Portable battery makes very much sense in either ergonomics wise, either in terms of handling the weight, or either in terms of its feasibility for both two-wheelers as well as three-wheelers, but not necessary for four-wheelers, because we are and buses, because we are talking about robotic arms in that case. Just to tell you, Ola Electric is already running pilots in Delhi with the portable battery technology, where they have installed hubs. The batteries are continuously charged, and then the drivers come, they pay whatever it is required, they submit their old battery, pick up their new battery, and then they continue. What are the other questions? Yeah, I think that's a very good question by Vishant Saini. Uh, when we dispose the batteries of EVs, the chemicals used in batteries won't hamper the climate. I think it is like this. It is actually beautiful. I'll tell you how. Batteries, as long as they have their life, can be used in dynamic environment like vehicles. But once their life almost comes to an end, they can be used as for static purposes, like storing power from say solar energy, from wind energy, as a static power source, right? So that way there is a second life for these batteries that is happening. But yes, we are too early to comment because the disposal of these batteries, this disposal of fuel cells also needs to be brought into the policies. But at this point of time, we are just struggling with penetration, and we are just struggling with right entry into the EVs. I think that is much a far cry. As we start getting more into the market and getting more into the volumes, I think these are the different business opportunities that would come in, and these are must to counter the climate erosion. Any other questions? Delivery e-cart services, I think I've already answered. Uh, I think two-wheelers is again one of the lowest hanging fruits, just because the costs are less, and now players B2, I mean players like Bounce, and yeah, Bounce, where basically you kind of rent these vehicles, right? And when these players kind of get in touch with OEMs, and then they come with innovative business model of maintaining those assets, and right, owning those assets in the right way, and then make them available to public, and their design and charging is, and the range is also designed as per these nodal points. I think a lot of these technology companies have started coming in, and it is very interesting to connect all these dots. And I'm very eager to know, because all this data and all these statistics are very helpful to design right solution. We do not need a vehicle of 30 lakhs which can run 500 kilometers. Maybe no. All we need is a vehicle which could run for 100 kilometers, with which costs around 5 to 6 lakhs. And after 100 kilometers, maybe we charge it for about an hour's time. At least the intracity transportation, if at all, some significant percent of that can be converted from the ICE vehicles to electric. I think we will have much better and quality air to breathe. What is your plan on charging stations? Are you looking for any swapping model? I think this is another question. Gati has got around 6-7. Look, I mean, its presence in around 670 cities. But then it is like this: the charging and electric vehicles always gets into the chicken and egg story. Uh, so the charging infra players say that, hey, we are ready to invest, but where are the vehicles? And then vehicles would say, we are ready to produce vehicles, but where are the charging infra? I think this is where the government is playing a very balanced approach. It is releasing the incentives, it is releasing the geos that are required, so that the serious players are able to enter into the charging infra. And when serious players with deep pockets and the ability to wait for the return of investments start venturing into it, and there are also programs where the existing petrol bunks like IOCL, HPCL, BPCL, etc., have to segregate certain space within them for the EV charging infra. When these, again, all these things are taking shape, we are at a very nascent stage. But then all these innovative ideas and concepts, when they come together, and that is when the charging infra also picks up. So it is, imagine there is a company which says that, hey, I'm ready to invest. Fortum, for example, invested across on charging pedestrians across Hyderabad. They have around 15 charging pedestrians. But then what are their returns on their investment? Absolutely zero, except for the Zoom cars. Nobody, and maybe some Ola, Uber cars. Nobody else is charging them. But then they've taken a choice. I mean, they've taken a stand that we will invest, and then we will encourage the market to grow, right? Imagine 3 to 4 such players, right, that would come into this market, and then government overnight says that, hey, every IOCL, every fuel station must have X percentage of its space dedicated to charging infra, and anybody can come and invest. It happens overnight. It happens overnight. That is possible in India. So I think this is an easier problem to solve. But then the bigger problem is even deeper decision making by the government, right decision making to encourage B2B, and at the same time the better product portfolios. Right now we have Tikar and Verito and probably Eon. We need more models. We need more models. For example, like for every model we have diesel, petrol. We also need to have electric. That is how I think. So that is when things get excited. Any other questions? How long it might take for at least 50% adoption in Indian market scenario? What are the government regulations that are viable in the market? I think 50% adoption is a real far cry. I would say nothing less than a decade. Yeah, nothing less than a decade. But then things will change when the mainstream players like Tata's, Mahindra's, Hyundai's, etc., they start taking things. As per the recent policy given by the government, there is no such relaxation has been given on electric retrofitment. Yeah, you're right. So FAMES 1.0 has got a scope for electric retrofitment. we were very shocked to see that retrofitment subsidy was removed from FAMES 2.0. You're absolutely correct. But then we are knocking the doors of NITI Aayog, saying that I think this is not a real nice step. But then the logic of the government is, if at all we give to retrofitment, then the product innovation and new product development gets hampered. However, we gave our own opinion, saying that I think retrofitment is something that needs to be looked in, and they said that they would look into it. You're right. What's your take on battery swapping technology and fuel cell technology? Battery swapping technology, of course, I spoke about it. And fuel cell technology, let me talk about fuel cell technology. Fuel cell technology comes into play, especially for the larger range. For example, 250, 300 kilometers range is when fuel cell technology comes into picture. But then for smaller range and intra-city range and probably 80 to 120 kilometers per day kind of a range, fuel cell technology is again not a viable option. I think EVs is the right option. There is a company called Ballard based out of Canada which works on these fuel cells, and you can look into them. I'm looking at different uh, platforms to look at the questions. Any other questions? What about charging points? Charging points, I have briefed you. I've just answered that point. What else? When you adopted EV retrofitment solution, how could it be financially viable to the Gati? Because you might have already invested on IC engines, then again converting EV is viable. Yeah, great. I think that's a good question. See, basically, anything works. The success of it depends upon the end user, that is the driver, owning those vehicles, buying those vehicles. So that is why what we have done, Gati has initially invested in procuring certain vehicles to demonstrate that confidence to the driver partner so that they can move. In terms of economic viability, yes, I wouldn't confidently say that we are viable, but we are doing it to encourage the driver partners to consider buying it, because once the volumes increase, in automatically the prices come down. That's the general conception. CNG and gas-based segment impact. Yeah, I think had CNG really been successful, there would not have been such a strain on the environment, because CNG not being successful, and I think CNG will face its own, I would say, natural death. Now it is right now people are trying to take a leapfrog jump to EVs. They also want to kind of avoid BS6 and directly come into EV. Certain companies. So I think CNG will find its, I mean, very limited applications. Any other questions? Could you please elaborate on OpEx of IC and EV? I've done that just in the beginning. Okay, let me tell you you do the math. It is easy. For an ICE, it is roughly around 4 to 5 rupees per kilometer, and for EV, it is somewhere between, basis the vehicle portfolio, right? Whether it's a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler or a four-wheeler, it ranges somewhere from 1 rupees to 2 rupees, right? That's how it is. So the more kilometers you run, the faster you get your return on investment. You should change battery every 3 years. Yes, you are right. The battery life right now, most of the batteries have the life at this point of time is up to 3 years, and after 3 years, we of course need to change. You're right. In what way EV cost effective than CNG? I think when you compare EV and CNG, then you cannot definitely get much cost benefit. EV, you will get much cost, but I mean you will be able to appreciate the cost benefit only when you compare with fossil fuels like diesel and petrol. With CNG, it is almost on par. For example, EV is around 1 to 2 rupees, CNG would be around 2 to 3 rupees, and other ICE is around 4 to 5 rupees per kilometer, right? So there wouldn't be much this thing, but then it is basically the adoption of technology, and we are not able to, we were not very successful in adopting CNG, but let us hope we will be successful in adopting EV. Considering the market scenario and amount of investment required to enter into EV and the ROI, don't you think this is not the right time? Might be 5 years down the line, it will be a great opportunity. Great. So, how do I talk about it? Probably 3 4 years ago, maybe people would have asked the same question to the Tesla owner, right? Look at Tesla now. It is one of the cash-rich companies, and it is almost getting profitable. and it is almost killing the existing players, whether it is General Motors or Ford to a certain extent, right? So I think there is no right time to start a right thing. I think we need to begin now. Uh, but since this is a bigger piece, bigger puzzle, people can choose whatever they want to choose to solve in their capacity. But again, I completely agree with you. When big players come into picture on these things, then things will happen. For example, if imagine, right? Tesla starts making vehicles for India, right? More, with a little premium, and then what would happen? What would happen to the other players, right? So they can't take a chance, and we may not know right now, but yes, the R&D is happening, the product development is happening for these products, even among the mainstream OEMs. But CNG vehicles cost way too less than EVs. Yes, my friend, you are right. Tesla is still not available in India because of Indian market, and majority of people can't afford Tesla. Yeah, Tesla as Tesla to India, but no. But are you aware that Mercedes-Benz lorries are being driven in India? Are you aware? Have you ever dreamt that you and I will own a Benz car, but then the lorry driver is able to afford a Benz lorry? It is happening through Bharat Benz, right? Daimler Chrysler got in tie-ups with Ashok Leyland, and then they started a new entity called Bharat Benz, right? So there are ways when they want to address this market, when they study the market, they know that India is a high, I wouldn't say price sensitive market, it is high value intrinsic market, right? I think the right products would come into picture. We may not need automatic driving cars, right? All we need is electric vehicle driving cars. If only Tesla says that, hey, I remove the autopilot mode and I give you a car which runs on EV, I would say that the cost would automatically drastically come down by 30-40% by there. We don't need such a technology at this point of time. Even if you and I own Tesla, we dare not to drive in an autopilot mode, right? Except on ORRs. Correct? So I think it is possible. It is possible. Any other questions? Great, great. Bharat Benz are in commercial vehicle segment, not into EV. Yeah, I have taken that as an example, my friend. For example, if Bharat Benz was able to bring Benz product in competition to the Tata 407s and iShares, Tesla can also bring Bharat Tesla. Who knows, right? That is just a scenario. I mean, what I'm trying to say, and Bharat Benz is not a different company. It's a Benz, the Daimler Chrysler's product, but then it is modified to the needs of Indian market. Great, great. I think great interacting with all of you. Despite this being a Sunday evening and you have choices to really relax in multiple other ways, but then you chose to attend this live session. I hope I was able to excite you, give you some deeper insights than what you generally read in Times of India or Indian Express. Right? I think I was able to give it. Keep following me on LinkedIn. I will definitely share a lot much information. I will share my own opinion, interpretation of how this market is growing. And since I'm also part of a lot of advisory committees which are into policy making, if you really have certain points that you would like to communicate and then you want me to take it to the right policy makers, please feel free to write and to get in touch with me. In all my possible capacities, I would definitely try to bring it in. For example, we should be very thankful for a state like Telangana and for leaders like KTR and Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, who are very, very much interested in encouraging, in developing Hyderabad as an EV, I would say, ecosystem and EV manufacturing hub. I was part of one of the closed room meetings with Mr. KTR, and he was very clearly saying that all companies are ferrying to Chennai and Bangalore, and this is the time, right? We need to bring the auto companies to Hyderabad also. I think with this Exicom, I think has already started its operations, and there are companies like eTrio, which is based out of Hyderabad, and Electra Green, the Goldstone, again, the Telangana-based company. And I'm sure, and there is another company called Etos, which is again into three-wheelers, then BYD, I mean, through Electra Green. So there is a lot of action happening in and around Hyderabad, and I'm really excited to be here, even geographically. So I'm ready to mentor, I'm ready to guide, I'm ready to kind of do whatever it takes to encourage the e-mobility and then do my bit of thing for the sustainable development. Yeah, another question. Battery is the heart of EV, which costs 40% of the total cost. Whereas, on the other hand, IC is robust and have long life. You are absolutely correct. We are now the battery technology is also improving. Earlier, earlier it used to be lead acid battery with only 6 months life, but now we have come to lithium ion battery with 3 years life. I'm sure we'll get better with solid state batteries with 6 7 years life. Just hold on, let the technology evolve. Great, everybody. Thank you very, very much. Let us know, apart from eco-friendly, how is it economically viable? Guys, economic viability I've already mentioned. It is a simple math you do for it. Look at the units that are consumed and the kilometers the battery gives. Look at the diesel that is consumed and the kilometer it gives, and then you do the math. You will know the OPEX plus you also know the capex, what the costs are, and then you do it. You will understand it. It is simple. Great, great. So since this is a Sunday, I have immediate call from the Home Ministry. I better go attend that. Uh, Thank you very much for this live interaction. I hope I added value to most of you. And what are the threats? I will answer all of this maybe in some other live session. I will continue to interact with you, and then I will answer most of the sessions. Please feel free to comment. Please feel free to express all your opinions. I would definitely love to kind of answer all of them either on LinkedIn or Facebook or on YouTube. You can also write to me, rajiv.ysr@avanindia.com. Thank you very much, and it was great interacting with all of you. Sorry for the initial hiccup where it was muted and you could not, some of you could not follow. That was a mishap because, as I said, I was handling three platforms: YouTube, Restream, LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. Right? Thank you very much. Thanks. Great. Manasa, Digambar, Bhukya, Balaram, Vishant, Akula, Digambar. Great. Thank you very much for interacting. Thank you very much for your great inputs, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks a lot. Bye. Rajiv signing off. See you. Bye bye.